We're less than 1 week into the fantasy baseball season. Surely nobody's panicking about their team, right? I mean, nobody's overreacting to one bad game, are they? You already know the answer. Is an obvious yes, but let me go down each of the players who are off to horrible starts in the first less than a week of the fantasy baseball season. Tell you who you should be worried about and who you shouldn't. Now, I won't normally use this time to talk about injured players. I mean, it's pretty clear if a player isn't worth keeping, it wasn't a high-end draft pick, you can cut bait. If you have room, you can stash them. And the best players who are going to be hurt, as long as they're not out for the season, you just put them on IL and find a replacement. But I do want to talk about one player who there's a legit reason to question, should you just panic on him and cut bait for good? That's Royce Lewis. And the reason I say that is because he is always hurt. I made Lewis one of my first must-have players, a guy I really thought could absolutely break out this season, and maybe he still can, but we're going to have to wait at least a month to see it. He injured his quad on opening day after hitting a home run early in the game, no less, so we're going to have to wait. I mean, of course, you keep him. I'm not saying you drop him or you consider dropping him, but I'm just going to say this right now. I am absolutely worried because even when he comes back, I'm just going to be worried that there's another injury coming. So for the time being, you're just going to have to wait and hope that that breakout season or partial season still happens. But I am definitely concerned. All right, now on to the biggest disappointments of the early portion of the season, which basically is the first weekend of action. It's going to be mainly pitchers because, it takes a little longer for hitters to really start to slump. I do have a couple, but let's start with the shortest outing among all the top tier starting pitchers. I think we can call Max Fried one of the top pitchers in fantasy. Maybe not quite top 10, but pretty close. This is a pitcher you expect consistent performance from. And what he gave you in his first start was the exact opposite. Didn't even get out of the first inning. Before recording 2 outs, he walked 3 batters, allowed 2 hits, and 3 runs. Let's just get this out of the way. Should you be worried about Fried because of this terrible start to the season? Not at all. I mean, this isn't a player who is really known to be up and down, inconsistent. Like I just said, that's what he was known for, is not that he strikes out a ton of batters, that, he's somebody who blows hitters away. He's just somebody who gets out there and does his job. He has good K numbers, doesn't really give up games like this too often. So we're going to look at it as a blip on the radar, just unfortunately happened to come in the first week of the season. Also worth noting, this is a high-powered Philly offense that he faced, and so that has something to do with it. Look, there's a lot of offense in this series, just combined. Some pitchers, including the Philly bullpen, which is supposed to be the best in the majors, a lot of those pitchers gave up a lot of runs. In fact, there's one pitcher I'm going to talk about pretty soon that you might need to worry a little bit about. Other pitcher who got lit up was very unfortunate because I happen to think he was a great waiver wire pickup. Some people took him with the last pick of their draft, and in fact, his ADP started to climb. But Luis Severino did hurt you if you had him in your lineup. In his first start as a Met, after such a strong spring, he gave up 12 hits and 6 earned runs. With pitchers that you draft late, especially if it's a young pitcher or a pitcher coming back from injury or someone who's coming off a rough year, which would be Severino, you probably want to play the waiting game and see how they look. I didn't do that with him because it was the Brewers, right? This isn't a team I was afraid of. This isn't a high-powered offense necessarily. He looked so good just the last couple of weeks. It seemed like everything was falling into place for him. So should we have drafters' remorse? Is this a guy that should just be thrown immediately back to waivers? A lot of people already have. He was the most dropped player on Yahoo just yesterday. I understand why. I'll just say this, though. Again, one game and his first of the season. I'm going to hold on if possible. I get it's very tempting to rage drop a player like this. There's some other pitchers who did the same thing, but we can't just discount everything that we had hoped for based on this one game. He can get better. If he looks bad, especially if he looks this bad the next time around, yeah, I'm done. But let's give it one more start at least. The next most dropped player was another late round kind of sleeper that started gaining traction. And I will just say this too. I fully endorsed AJ Puck as a starter. His first go-around as a starter. Remember, he was a closer last year. He's always been used in relief. This year, the Marlins put him in the rotation. And it just went as bad as possible. The problem with Puck is not just that he got hit hard, he hurt himself because he did something he doesn't usually do. He walked a ton of batters. In fact, he could barely find the strike zone, and that's what's the most concerning. The guy just was off. In just 2 innings of work, 6 walks, and you can see from his pitch chart, he barely even caught the strike zone. So what do we make of this? Well, as tempting it is to drop him, and I understand if you want to, I'm going to also give him one more chance because this is just not like him. Look, there's no physical issues that we know of. He was just wild. It happens. Maybe he was nervous. Maybe he was trying a little too hard to place the ball. I don't know, but I will say that walks are not his thing. In fact, that's why I was so high on him before draft season was over, because he had just a 5% walk rate last year. I feel like he can figure it out. I know it's very tempting to get rid of him, but I will say he does get the Angels this next time around. Not an offense I'm scared of. Not that you should have been scared of the Pirates offense, but they did a number on the Marlins rotation. The whole Marlins team was a big letdown in the first week of the season because they somehow got swept by Pittsburgh. Their pitchers look terrible. This is not what we expected. As far as Puck goes, the talent is still there. The opportunity is still there. I'm going to give him one more shot. But let's get to hitters now, but stay in Miami. Should we actually be worried about last year's batting champ in the NL, Luis Arias? Yes, I do think this is a fair question. Not only did he go 0 for 6 on opening day, to me this is the most surprising thing of opening day. He started out 0 for 10 on the year, and now he is 2 for his first 18. Now, the thing is, he needs to get base hits because this is a guy who will not get you home runs or steals, probably not double digits in either category. So if he's not hitting for average and he's not on a great offense, do we really need to throw him out there every single day? The obvious answer is the hits will come. I mean, this isn't somebody who just now got good at hitting the ball last year. He's been hitting over 300, well over 300 his entire major league career. He's always got the highest contact rate in the majors. The hits will come. The fish should get better. I mean, don't do anything rash here. So now let's talk about another veteran you think you don't even have to worry about the entire season. Nolan Arenado just collected his first hit of the season on Sunday night, but that makes him 1 for 16 with just 1 RBI, no home runs. Nothing to worry about here, right? Bad week, move on, he's fine. Is it that simple? Remember last year, he got off to a very slow start, only hit 231 in April, and very little power. You also have to wonder, is this Cardinals offense just not good anymore? I mean, yeah, Paul Goldschmidt, he seems fine, but up and down the lineup, a lot of inconsistency. It's not what it used to be. Are we going to see a repeat of last year when we get a lot of disappointment? And the other reason this is a legitimate question with Arenado is even though he did get much better as the season went on, he still finished with subpar StatCast numbers. His hard hit rate was below league average. So are his days of being a fantasy stud just over? I will say I'm just a little bit worried now, moderately concerned that Arenado will still be fine, but really not a huge advantage over a replacement level player. In reality, sure, but we're talking fantasy. I don't think 30 home runs are an automatic for him. Only had 26 last year. What if he put up numbers out of the same or even a little bit less than last year? Maybe we're barely getting over 20 home runs. Finally, broke that streak of 100 RBIs. What if that takes a step down too? It's probably hard to sell on Arenado right now because it's not like his draft stock was super high, but I will just say this is a situation that does bear monitoring. So also in that Cardinals lineup, what about Jordan Walker, the young potential star? Not off to a great start either. Got his first hit. He's 1 for 10 with 3 strikeouts. There's some noise that he's having some swing and miss issues in the spring. And like Arenado last year, got off to a slow start and got sent down. Is that going to happen again? I'm actually less worried about Walker because, first of all, I believe in the talent. He was one of my breakout candidates, but also it's just way too early. He will figure it out, I think. But also the Cardinals need him. I mean, Victor Scott forced into action because of Edmonds' injury. They can't afford to just have Walker sitting there in the minors. And like I said, this whole offense just needs him, needs a boost. I hope he can provide it. And then let's talk closers who haven't been closing the door here. Jose Alvarado thought was going to be one of the most safe options if you're waiting on like a tier 2 closer. Well, he did exactly what the rest of the Phillies bullpen did. And in fact, several pitchers, including Aaron Nola, just didn't look good against the Braves. I know that offense can make a lot of pitchers look bad, but Alvarado now has a 54 ERA, only recorded 2 outs, and wound up giving 5 runs up. The bottom line here, I'm not concerned with Alvarado because this is not a young pitcher, an inexperienced pitcher. I think he'll be fine. I'm going to just ignore the one outing. But also, if you look at the details of that outing, yeah, it was the Braves, great offense. But 3 of those runs that were scored, credited to him, were actually given up by Connor Brogdon. They were inherited runs that went on his tally. Yeah, that's how it works. But look, it's just a bad inning. I'm not worried. Alvarado should be fine. And if anything, it might present a slight buy low opportunity. But what about in Detroit? We all assumed Alex Lang would again be the closer as he started out last year. But if you remember, he didn't hold that job all last year. Does he even have the job right now? Assumed it was his, but the first save went to Jason Foley. And to make things worse, in Lang's first and only appearance so far, walked 3 batters, only got 1 out. Very rarely will I take 1/3 of an inning as a sample size and say you should be panicked about a player. But in this case, I think we have legit reason to worry because it may be that Lang just isn't the guy, or at least could be in a committee. Sure, there's plenty of closer by committee type situations, but is Lang really going to get that job back? If you're not solid with your closer situation on your fantasy team, or you just want to wait, I get it. You don't have to cut bait here, but if you're ready to move on, I'm actually okay with it. And then I feel like we have to talk about a pitcher that was getting a lot of hype as a breakout player this season, Bailey Ober. Ober arguably had the worst weekend because he gave up 8 runs in an inning and a third, and it was to the Royals. This is something that hasn't really been a problem with Ober. I mean, he's not like a heavy lean ground ball pitcher, but still, it's definitely worrisome. So does this teach us a lesson to not get enamored with trendy sleepers in the preseason? Well, if we haven't learned that lesson by now, I don't know that Bailey Ober or anybody else will teach it to us. But still, it's one game. As bad as it looked, you got to hold on and just see what happens from here on out. Got you covered for waiver wire, panic players, buy low, sell high, and a lot more. Keep it here all season long. Subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when we go live to answer your questions.